stream about Spiritism, Sunday night, October 3rd, 2021. And we are going over on these Sundays the Spiritist Review of 1858. And this is from the February edition of 1858, where Allan Kardec, into his monthly magazine, talks about the order of spirits. And we're going to review the third, imperfect spirits, the second, good spirits, and the first order, pure spirits, and see what Allan Kardec talks about them. And you can see where you place yourself. Very interesting. I haven't been able to figure out exactly. I'm somewhere there, not too high, but we'll talk about that as we get into it. But first, if you want to know about Spiritism and what it can do for you and what it can mean for you, I recommend my free PDF book on my site, Spiritism, nwspiritism.com, and it's Spiritism 101, the third revelation. And it's in PDF version. You can download it. It's also in French, free. You can, of course, you can also buy it in Kindle, paperback, or Audible format if that is what you would like. That's what you prefer to read. But it's in PDF for free, and that will give you the central tenets, kind of give you an idea, an overview of it. And then I would recommend you read the Spirits book and other books. And I have a lot of other books too that would get you more to dive deeper and deeper. And of course, tonight we're talking about spirits. And I dive pretty deep on spirits and the spirit universe in book 2 of Spiritism, The Spirit World Revealed to an Anglican Vicar. And in it from the Reverend G. Val Owen. And of course, I bring in information from other books by, of course, psychograph by Chico Xavier, Yvonne Piera, Allan Kardec, Devaldo Franco, Leon Denis, to name most of them, actually. But what is a spirit? So who are you, right? Now he's talking about spirits, but what is a spirit? How does it grow? How does it go from the third level to the second level to the first level? Does it increase in its intelligence, in its power? I mean, the whole world of knowing of who you are and who you're going to be when you leave this physical world explains a lot of what you're going through on this physical world, because you're being trained like in a flight simulator to be a very powerful high spirit that has the ability to fashion planets, to guide cultures, all these things. This is why you're going through the rough boot camp that you are. Okay, let's get into the levels of a spirit. Let me show this on the screen. Let me hide this. And go like this. Okay, what we're reading now is Different Order of Spirits. A central point in the Spiritist doctrine is the difference among spirits, be it intellectual or moral. Their teachings never change regarding this subject. Nevertheless, it is essential to know that they do not eternally belong to the same order, and that as a consequence, these orders do not constitute distinct species. They indicate different degrees of development. Now, this is important to learn. The spirit world is dynamic. Things are always changing. Spirits have the ability to modify the environment and atmospheres and data around them and the parameters of what people can do. So it's dynamic. Things change, and they change a lot because of your spiritual maturity and where you are in the spirit hierarchy. And you rise in the spirit hierarchy by having imbued spiritual being moralism, love, charity, fraternity, right? Getting rid of your primitive emotions. So these lower order ones are mostly moved by primitive emotions. Let's carry on. And of course, it's just like also Spiritism says, I want to start before I get too far, is that, many religions think the angels were made. No, angels are some of these different orders of spirits. Everyone have gone through them until they become a pure spirit. And of course, some spirits we think are angels, but really aren't what we is regarded in the spirit world as angels yet, but there are wonderful people nevertheless. Okay, let me carry on. The spirits follow the progressive march of nature. Those of inferior orders are still imperfect. Later, after learning, they reach the superior orders. They move along the hierarchy while acquiring qualities, experience, and knowledge which they still lack. The breastfeeding child is not similar to what it shall be at a mature age. However, it is always the same being. The classification of spirits is based on their degree of progress, their acquired qualities, and their imperfections that need to be stripped off. By the way, such classification is nothing of absolute. Each category only shows one key feature, but from one degree to the next, the transition is soft, just like the levels of heaven. There's no set numbers. It's kind of soft. There's a lot of gray area. The nuance fades away towards the extremes, like it does in nature, and the colors of the rainbow are in the several stages of human life. It is impossible to form a higher or lower number of classes according to the point of view used to consider the subject. The same happens to all forms of scientific classification. They can be more or less complete, more or less rational, more or less accommodating to the intelligence, but whatever they may be, they can never change the fundamentals of the science. Once questioned about this subject, the spirits may have given different answers with respect to the number of categories, but this is not important. Critics take this apparent contradiction, not considering that the spirits themselves do not give importance to what is purely conventional. To them, thought is everything. They lead us to the choice of format, expressions, and classification. In one word, the systems. And that's what heaven is. It's all about of processes and systems. Amazing. We shall still add the following consideration. One should never forget that among the spirits, as with human beings, there are those that are highly ignorant, and we must resist our tendency to think that the spirits must all know everything just because they are spirits. Every classification requires method, analysis, and profound knowledge of the subject. Well, in the spiritual world, those who have limited knowledge, like the ignorant among us, are incapable of an ample view of the broad picture and to establish a system. And those who are capable may vary in the details according to their viewpoint, especially when a division has nothing of absolute. The New, Gestio, and Tonofor each have followed a different method. Nevertheless, the science of botany has not changed. They have neither invented the plants nor their features. They observed the analogies and formed the group or classes based on that. That was how we proceeded. We did neither invent the spirits nor their characters. We saw and observed. We judged them based on their words and acts, and then we classified them based on their similarities. This is what anybody else would have done in such a case. However, we cannot claim authorship of the whole work. If on one hand, classification given below is not entirely outlined by the spirits, and if it is of our own initiative, and on the other hand, it contains all the elements acquired from their teaching, the remaining work was to formulate a physical arrangement of the material. The spirits generally admit three main categories or large division. At the end, on the bottom of the scale, lies the imperfect spirits, those who still need to go through all or almost all stages. These are categorized by the prevalence of matter over the spirit and by their inclination towards evil. Those at the second level are categorized by the prevalence of the spirit over matter and by the desire of good deeds. These are the good spirits. The first category thus comprehends the pure spirits, those who have reached the supreme degree of perfection. And knowing that there's different spirits in different levels, it does make sense where a lot of organized religions, the Catholic religion as one example, and there's other Protestant subdivisions, is that people are told over and over again, don't communicate with spirits, they're demons. Well, they're not really demons. That's why reading the book of Mediums by Allan Kardec is important, because you have to be able, if you talk to spirits or you communicate with spirits, you have to, over a long run, find their communication and decide what level they are and what their level of knowledge is. Some want to be mischievous. Some want to be outright dangerous. Some want to just tell you spiritually good things. That's why you have to have intelligence. And when you communicate with the other side, because they're all at different levels. When we die, we don't become an all-knowing angel. Sorry about that. Doesn't exist. Such a division seems perfectly rational to us and presents well-defined characters. What was still missing to distinguish in sufficient number was the nuances of each group. This is what we did with the help of spirits, whose benevolent instructions have never failed us. With the support of that classification table, it will be easy to determine the category and the degree of superiority or inferiority of the spirits with whom we may entertain ourselves, and as a consequence, the degree of confidence and the regard they deserve. Besides this, of our personal interest, as we ourselves, by our souls, belong to the spiritual world, in which we shall enter as soon as we leave our mortal covering, our wrapping, our physical body, indicating to us what we need to do in order to achieve perfection and the supreme good. Nevertheless, we will observe that the spirits do not always and exclusively belong to this or that class. Their progress only gradually takes place, and many times more in one direction than another, thus being able to have characteristics of several categories, which is easy to observe from their language and acts. So, let's go over the spirit scale, the third order in perfect spirits. General characteristics: prevalence of matter over spirit, have the tendency towards evil, show ignorance, arrogance, egotism, and all their consequential passions. That's a lot of us. Have the intuition of God, but do not understand Him. Not all of them are essentially bad, but some show more levity, inconsequence, and wickedness than evilness. Others neither practice good nor evil, but by simply not being good, they reveal inferiority. Others still rejoice with iniquity and are delighted by the very opportunity of practicing it. These can associate their intelligence to meanness or malevolence, but whatever their intellectual development may be, their ideas are not much elevated and their feelings are more or less abject. Their comprehension about the spirit world is limited, and their little knowledge is mixed with their preconceived ideas from the corporeal life. This can only give us false and incomplete notions, but the thoughtful observer may many times discovers in their communication through Imperfect the confirmation of the immense truth taught by superior spirits. And I've seen this quite a few times in medium meetings where you have these lower spirits and they only know what they know. They only know themselves. And some of them are downright dismissive of the other mediums in the group. And one of them called us all sorts of names that we were, ignorant, etc. And so I've seen these imperfect or very low spirits in medium meetings. Oh, went too far. Sorry. Their character is revealed by their language. Every spirit who, in communications, betrays one thought may be classified in the third order. Thus, every bad thought which is suggested to us comes from a spirit of that order. They see the happiness of good spirits, and this is an inexorable distress to them as they experience all the anguishes produced by envy and jealousy. These spirits keep the memory and perception of the suffering of their corporeal life, and those perceptions are sometimes harder than reality. They really suffer by the ill deeds they had to endure and by those they had imposed to others. As they suffer for a long time, they judge their suffering as eternal. God allows them to think so in order to help them seek a better way. These spirits may be divided into four main groups. So this is the third order. Now he's dividing into four main groups. Ninth class, impure spirits. They are inclined towards evil, object of their concerns. As spirits, their advice are perfidious, spread discord and mistrust, and use all mass to better deceive others. They associate themselves with those persons of sufficiently weak character to give in to their suggestions in order to take them to perdition, happy if able to delay progress, leading others to succumb in their trials. Their language can be recognized in the manifestations, the triviality and gross expressions, which the spirits, as with men, are always indications of moral, if not intellectual, inferiority. Their communications reveal the baseness of their tendencies. When trying to deceive, speaking in a sensible way, they soon reveal their origin, as they cannot sustain such role for long. And that I have seen in a medium's meeting where the access spirit talked to me about something, and I said, "This doesn't sound right." And they kind of repeated the same thing over and over again. And then they said something I knew to be false, and I said, "Okay, this is a false message." Certain peoples made them malevolent divinities. Others designated them by demons, genies, or evil spirits. When incarnated, the bodies they animate are inclined to all kinds of vices, as well as their consequent vile and degrading passions, sensuality, cruelty, forgery, hypocrisy, cupidity, and sordid greed. They do evil things for the pleasure of it, most of the time without motive, and by their hatred of good, usually electing their victims among good people. They are a scourge to humanity, whatever the class they belong, and the varnish of civilization does not spare them from the opprobrium and ignominy. Eighth class, frivolous spirits. These spirits are ignorant, malevolent, inconsequent, and scorner. Get involved in all things, responding to anything with no regard whatsoever to the truth. It's kind of like a child in class raises their hand and to any question and just starts talking without knowing what they're talking about. As they enjoy provoking small upsets as well as little happiness, the spirits like to produce discord and maliciously induce error by mystifications and naughtiness. Spirits in this class are typically designated as elves, goblins, trasgos, and gnomes. They depend on the superior spirits by whom they are frequently employed, just as we do with our servants and workers. They seem more than the others attached to matter, having an active role as agents as the vicissitudes of global elements, living in the air, water, fire, and in the solid bodies, or even in the entrails of the earth. Several times they manifest their presence with sensitive effects, such as raps, movements, abnormal displacement of solid bodies, air agitation, etc., which gave them the name boisterous spirits. It is acknowledged that those phenomena are not due to fortuitous and natural cause when they present an intentional and intelligent character. All spirits can produce these effects, but the superior spirits generally leave that to inferior spirits, more apt to material than intelligent actions. When communicating in language sometimes shows wit and happiness, but almost always without depth. Their sarcastic and satiric expressions contain caprices and ridicule. They sometimes assume fictitious names for malice rather than malevolence. Seventh class, pseudo-wise spirits. Having extensive knowledge, these spirits assume to know more than they actually do. They show some progress from several points of view. Their language has a serious character, which may lead to mistakes regarding their capacity and illumination. But very frequently, it's simply a reaction of their prejudices and systematic ideas carried over from their earthly life. Their words are a mixture of some truth and some absurdities, which stem presumption, pride, envy, stubbornness that they have not yet stripped. Sixth class, neutral spirits. Though these are not good enough. Oh, sorry, I went too far on here. These are not good enough to do good deeds, or bad enough to do evil ones. They incline towards one or the other and do not rise above the vulgar of humanity. With respect to morality as well as intelligence, these spirits attach themselves to earthly things whose gross pleasure they miss. So that was 9 through 6. That was a class of the third order of spirits. Now, let's get to the second order of spirits, which is good spirits. General characteristics: prevalence of spirit over matter, desire of good. Their qualities and capacities for the practice of good are proportional to the level they have reached. Some have science, others wisdom and goodness. The most advanced unite knowledge to moral qualities, as they are not completely dematerialized. They more or less maintain, according to their classes, traces of the corporeal existence, both in their language as well as in their habits, where we can even identify certain customs without which they would be perfect spirits. They understand God and the infinity and already enjoy the happiness of the good ones. They feel happy for the good they spread as well as the evil they avoid. Love is a bonding source of ineffable happiness, unaltered by envy, sorrow, or remorse, or by any other bad passion which torment the imperfect spirits. Nevertheless, all still have to endure trials before reaching absolute perfection. So this is where I look at that and try to place myself, and I go, well, I'm still kind of somewhat moved by envy, sorrow, remorse, right? And some bad passions. So I it's like I kind of you can find yourself in a bunch of different areas of characteristics here, but I don't think I'm very high up because I haven't gotten rid of all that primitive thoughts and emotions yet. As spirits, they give rise to good thoughts, deviating men from tortuous paths. During life, they protect those who are worthy of their protection and neutralize the influence of the imperfect spirits over those who are not pleased to submit to them. When incarnated, these are good and benevolent to all their neighbors. They are not moved by pride or selfishness or even by ambition, do not experience hate, resentment, envy, or jealousy, and practice good for the good. These are the commonly designated good geniuses or protector geniuses, spirits of good in the vulgar beliefs. Over the times of superstition and ignorance, they were transformed into beneficent divinities. They can also be divided into four main groups. So I'd like to think I'm in the good spirits, but as I read this and I said, do not experience hate, resentment, envy, or jealousy and practice good for the good, I haven't done that all the time. I've been guilty of that. So I'm still learning. Fifth class benevolent spirits. Goodness is their prevalent quality. Enjoy protecting and serving men, but their knowledge is limited. They have progressed more in the moral than in the intellectual sense. Fourth class spirits of science. The extension of their knowledge is what distinguishes them, less concerned with the moral questions than with the scientific one, for which they have more aptitude, but only see science from its utility point of view, not blending that with any passion characteristic of imperfect spirits. And I think now that I've seen a lot of in my profession, whereas I've done a lot in computer science, and people are very wise, very smart, and also in chemistry, that it's just they're just completely focused on that. They're very good people. There's nothing wrong with them, but they're not spiritually uh, inquisitive. They're scientifically inquisitive, which there's nothing wrong in that. It's just kind of at this life, at this point in time, is their driving characteristics. Third class, wise spirits. Moral qualities of the highest order are what distinguish them. Their knowledge is not unlimited, but they have such a high intellectual capability that it allows them to make a shrewd judgment of men and all things. And when they say wise, I think a lot of times you'll see is what is the definition of being wise? Well, it's knowledge, which is important, but it's also empathy, faith, and spirituality. And so it's knowledge with love, tempered with love, and intellectual capacity tempered with love, and fraternity and charity. So that is really what being wise means. Second class, superior spirits. Unite science, wisdom, and benevolence. Their language permanently dignified and elevated, breathes generosity, and sometimes it is sublime. Their superiority enabled them more than the others with the ability to give us the most rightful notions of the incorporeal world within the limits allowed to men. Show goodwill in the communication with those who, in good faith, look for the truth, and whose souls are released enough from their earthly harnesses to understand it. But stay away from those animated by curiosity, or those deviated from the righteous path due to the influence of matter. When exceptionally reincarnated on earth, it is to accomplish a mission of progress. It is when they offer us the type of perfection that humanity may aspire in this world. And we've seen a lot of that, like Mother Teresa, as an example, a wonderful person. And what we've been told by the spirits through spiritist mediums is most of these people we don't see, we don't know about them because our culture does not celebrate them. Our culture does not celebrate people who work day in, day out for the good of others. They celebrate people who entertain and who've gotten where they've gone by walking on others, are becoming rich by using others and taking advantage of other people. That's who our culture right now awards its focus. But there's a lot of these people out there, but we have to look at them. It's those people that are quiet and yet nice, those people that you go for advice, who have your good at heart, not their own good, is the most important priority for them. Now, the first order, pure spirits. The general characteristic, influence of matter is non-existence, possess absolute intellectual and moral superiority over the influence over the spirits of other orders. So, first order, pure spirits. Influence of matter is non-existent, meaning that it's that the temptations of the earth, the materialness of the earth, the pride and selfishness is this has nothing to do. It's like not important at all. And that's why, when you see in modern, let's say India, right, where these people roam and all they have is like a bowl and they have no possessions. Those are people who probably are, to the most part, I'm sure there's always exceptions, but are very superior spiritually because they understand you don't need to possess everything. You just really need to think spiritually and give yourself up to the will of God and the love of Jesus. And we don't have to do that to become better and better. There's other ways. But I'm just giving you an example of, because some people can just live a good life and just, work as, a, a, a plumber or a custodian or an engineer or a manager, and treat everyone absolutely nice and treat everyone as they should be treated, help their neighbors. And these are the same type of people, and make their money, support their family, drive a car, but they all these material possessions they put in their proper place. These are just there to be used because we're on this physical plane, and they're necessity to have. There's nothing wrong in that. So, first class pure spirits, having passed through all degrees of the scale and are cleansed from all impurities of matter. Now, just to make sure people understand, pure spirits could be here on this earth, but they're here on a mission. We are on a planet of regeneration. I'm sorry, we're on a planet of atonement now, coming to a planet of regeneration. A planet of atonement is where we have to go through trials and tribulations to learn from our past wrongs. And therefore, and let me show you this because I want to make sure that we understand where we are so no one feels bad. So in karma, the process is in our previous lives, everything's recorded, everything's in detail. Most of us, I would say the vast majority, as we've gone through life, we've hurt people, we've hurt ourselves, we've done stupid things. In this life, our trials and tribulations say, okay, well, this person's going to do something bad to us because we did something bad to another person in a previous life, and we have to learn what the other side of the equation feels like. Now, for a pure spirit, their trials and tribulations are maybe just experiences, and they put them in touch with other people, but they don't have to pay for past wrongs. They didn't do that. That's why I always tell everybody, if you want a better life, your next life, do as much good as you can in this life and don't harm anyone. Be part of society, be active, try to help as much as you can. But these pure spirits have already proven themselves and are here on a mission. They won't have the drastic car accident. They won't have a horrible form of cancer. They'll have flus and colds and things like that, but they won't have major distractions or major low points in their life. They'll live we'll think of a lucky life, like your Aunt Edna, who went through life and was a good mother and a good a wonderful person, nice everyone, and lived a long life and died a very peaceful, wonderful death. Well, she was probably a higher spirit here as an example for her family and those around her, because she had, as far as you could tell, she had no didn't have, wasn't betrayed by her husband or significant other, wasn't ever bankrupt, right? Wasn't robbed at gunpoint, all that stuff. Never had any of that. Well, she was, in her previous life, she had been a good person. So, therefore, if you want your future life to be good, make this life as well as you can. I know it's not easy, but that's something to show. And that's a good spirit like that is not going to experience that, and that's who you can tell for these unheralded people that they are really wonderful spirits. They may be a superior person within the second class, because they're pretty, a lot of those are really good classes too, but just to kind of give you an idea of looking at spiritual immaturity. And that's a good way of looking at people in general, is when you know someone. Oh, just the other day, my wife and I were talking to her cousin, and they had raised this boy. They adopted this boy who was, mainly on the streets. And now he's grown up, and unfortunately, he's on drugs and back on the streets, unfortunately. And they gave him every advantage that they could think of. And so Now, to them, it was incredibly sad that they had to experience that they loved this little boy, raised them, did as well as they could. And my wife knows them, and they're just really good people. And yet, still, he chose the wrong path. But if you look at it through the lens of Spiritism, what spirits have told us before is that families will volunteer to take primitive spirits and try to raise them as well as possible to give them, because spirits when they're young, when they're below like 15 to 20, they're very malleable, and their original character doesn't come through until 15 to 21, and they're trying to give them a foundation of love and doing the right thing. And that family did as well as they could, but it's up to the now when they get older, the free will decision of that adult to either take what their training was, their superior training as a child by a good family. And I know there's many families that aren't good, and those are a whole different subject of trials and tribulations. But he had the choice of having a good background and yet deciding to go down into the depth of addiction. Yeah, but that happens, and it's nothing. The spirit world will not ever blame the family because they tried their best and they volunteered to help this primitive spirit get a notch up. The primitive spirit didn't. But the important thing to remember is at some time when when that boy goes back into the spirit world and probably into the lower zones, he'll think about, oh, my family, they love me and they told me not to do this. He will think about this. In his next life, he may become much better. It may take a couple lives. I don't know. But don't don't ever think that, that known failure in your house, right? Or your extended family. Don't ever think that, oh my God, they're completely lost forever. No, no, they're not lost forever. They're just they're just a little bit primitive. They made mistakes, but the whole laws of karma, they'll have another life. They'll have to go through some tough trials. It's not going to be easy, but they'll have the ability to rise. And anything, the mistakes they make, and what the mistakes that they analyze, if not, they don't analyze in this life, if they analyze them in the next life, it will all help them. And whoever that extended family was, you know, not that you have to help these drug addicts who steal from you. You can push them. You can say, no, okay, until you're better, don't talk to me. You've got that right because you've tried before, but you've helped them in ways that you probably don't even realize. Okay, let me carry on first class pure spirits. Live in unaltered happiness as they no longer are subjected to the needs and vicissitudes of the material life. But such a happy state is not a monotonous idleness in a perpetual state of contemplation. They are the messengers and ministers of God, whose orders execute in order to maintain universal harmony. Command all spirits below them, attributing missions and helping in their progression. Show contentment in supporting men with their anguishes, stimulating them towards the practice of the good. Encourage them with the expiation of their faults, which keep them away from the supreme happiness. These are sometimes called angels, archangels, or seraphim. Men can communicate with them, but anyone who intended to have them at their service would be presumptuous. So, that is the classes of spirits. And I hope that explains. Let me put this down. There. I hope that explains a lot of having you go through your own classification, thinking, well, I'm kind of part of this, I'm part of that, right? Because we all have improvements to make, and we all have good parts and bad parts. But it's a good way of knowing what is the formula, or what are the outlines of where the spirit world wants us to go, right? They want us to rip out these primitive emotions, improve ourselves, get rid of pride and selfishness and our, materialistic point of view, which, you know, granted, we all have to, right? We have to work, we have to provide food, we have to help those around us. It always has to be part of our life. whenever we're on a physical planet, right? But it doesn't have to command us, it doesn't have to be our total focus of our lives is to accumulate more goods, because that's not what we're here for. I mean, in our culture is, if you're a billionaire, you're automatically the smartest, best person in the room. Well, no, that means nothing. And the spirit world says that, they give instances of this, rich, well-known person taking advice from someone who's like more of a janitor in their previous life, because that person wanted to learn more to be humble, but he was very spiritually superior. So your accumulated wealth, anything material, doesn't go with you when you die. The only thing that goes with you is right in here. And Spiritism tells us you are who you are when you get rid of this physical body. So when spirits die, when your Uncle Bob dies, he doesn't turn into an angel of goodness. He's still the same guy who cracked jokes and smoked a cigar, who shouldn't have, right? But you loved him, and he's still the same person. And hopefully he will grow and mature, and in his next life be prepared to learn even more. So I want to thank everyone for being with me tonight. And again, on Monday nights, I have a whole hour of answering questions about Spiritism. Of course, even on tonight, if you want to ask any questions, please always do so. I will stop what I'm doing, try to answer any questions that you have. And then on Tuesday night, I am talking about one of the books by a spirit, not by a spiritist medium, but we kind of compare and contrast what other spirits talk about. So in ending, again, I just like to recommend, if you're interested about spirits, who they are, how you grow as a spirit, because in the levels of heaven, there's different levels of heaven. Now, the spirits who talk to Reverend G. Valen talk about 10, others talk about 7, some talk about 3. But in the levels of heaven, and these are always, and the spirits themselves say that different spirits use different levels, but there's a lot of graduations. Is that you go to a city or a suburb or whatever in heaven, and you take classes, and then you go to more of a major city on that level, you take more classes, and when you accumulate that knowledge, and with advancing morally and spiritually, then you rise in the spirit world to the next level of heaven. Now, no, you don't graduate because you spent 6 months taking a class and the class has ended. No, you only rise when you are ready, and you're ready both with knowledge and spirituality. You climb up. And then when you climb up, you're not just given a piece of paper, you're actually given more tools in your toolbox. You're giving a greater set of permissions to explore more of the spirit world, because every spirit can go from their level down as they want. But you're also given more perception and power and ability to kind of go through the universal database and find out new things. You actually are increased in ability. So it's the more you understand spiritism, the more exciting life should be while you're on this planet, because you're just going through this simulator. You're getting these different trials and tribulations, all custom made for you, so you can learn and become a better person, and at some time a productive member of the Spirit Society. God bless.